Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special report for Cox News. Today is Thursday, September 4th. And big news today, His Lordship Archbishop Carlo Maria Viganò has issued a statement rebuking, his words, Trad Inc. for its Zip It policy. This is a big moment for His Excellency, as well as for the truth tellers in the traditional movement who are refusing to go along with the Michael Matt policy of Zip It, and to continue the policy of silence regarding the heresies and modernism coming out of the Vatican under Leo these days. This is a big statement issued by His Excellency. I want to go through it today, first and foremost. So if you could hit the like button here and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as our Rumble account, that'd be great. That really helps with us growing this account and getting the word out to more Catholics in need of truth in these times. So let's go through this article, the statement by His Excellency, which is really a pivotal moment in this battle that we have been fighting for some time now, as well as others who are in this space who deserve a lot of credit. And this is a great moment. So let's bring that up on the stage here. Here's the statement. His Excellency just put this out earlier today. He titles it Argumentum ex concessis. And it's in response to a statement, rather an article, that appeared on Aldo Valli's website. He's an Italian writer. And it's a commentary on an article written by Abbé Barthe, who I believe is French. And Abbé Barthe has written a really insightful essay on the pluralism of the conciliar church and how the neo-trad community is seeking entry into that ecumenical zoo. And His Excellency Archbishop Viganò makes the following point here, at least on Twitter, which I think was the correct point to mark here on Twitter. And again, we'll go through the article in just a moment. But here's what Archbishop Viganò says today. He says, the synodal church includes conservatives in its coveted pantheon, not only because it gives them what they want, solemn pontifical liturgies celebrated by influential prelates without doctrinal implications, but also because none of the Holy See's interlocutors has the slightest intention of demanding more. Significant point there, right? We know who he's referring to. And even if someone were to dare ask for more, the gatekeeper on duty would promptly intervene, calling for prudence and moderation, more concerned with preserving his own prestige than with the fate of the Catholic resistance. It's not, if you read between the lines here, it seems to me that His Excellency is referring to some of these most influential, prominent influencers in the U.S., especially Michael Matt, because based on this next line, here's what His Excellency says. This is accomplished by the Zip It policy advocated by Trad Inc., according to which the possible concessions the moderates hope to obtain from Leo suggest they should not criticize him openly so as not to alienate him. All praise Archbishop Viganò. This is a great statement. This is very much needed in this time, and to call out the shameful silence that has befallen the Trad Inc. community. And I want to again play this for everybody who hasn't yet seen it. This is the comment His Excellency is probably about here. This is a video from a podcast from Michael Matt and Taylor Marshall just a couple weeks ago.
This coalition together behind occupied lines, do the most we can, and if there is any goodwill in Pope Leo, which I believe there is, and if he sees that we're willing to meet him a little bit on something like the Latin Mass, well, great. Cardinal Burke was just talking to him last week, probably about the Latin Mass. If Cardinal Burke turns around and he sees the traditional Catholic movement like Night of the Living Dead, Leo is a heretic, well, it's just silly. It doesn't accomplish anything. So even in terms of trying to get some advantages like the Latin Mass restored, it makes sense to kind of zip it a little bit and see what happens with men like Cardinal Burke and Cardinal Muller and Cardinal Sarah, who are.
All right, so yeah, put your trust in Cardinal Burke, the one who has not never denounced the fraternal correction, never issued the fraternal correction of Francis, who wants to bring us all back to Vatican II and the Bonini documents and the Yves Congar Vatican II documents that he helped write. And this is the this is what you will get. This is the hope that you will get a nice Latin Mass, devoid of doctrine, devoid of real substance, at your local community in exchange for silence. So Archbishop Viganò is calling this out. And let's visit this essay that he put out. Again, he put this on his website here, the fullness of it. And it's an addendum again to an article written on Aldo Valli's website. Again, here, let's share that first, actually. That's probably better. We could do that here. It's an analysis of the reign of Leo on the Aldo Maria Valli blog. You can check that out there. But His Excellency praises Father Barthe, and here's the beginning where he quotes from the article. Here's what Father Barthe writes. There is a paradox, even a risk for those who invoke freedom for the traditional liturgy and catechism, that of being granted a sort of authorization for liturgical and doctrinal Catholicism. We have already cited as an example the paradoxical situation that arose in the 19th century French political system, when the most staunch supporters of the monarchical restoration, enemies in principle of the modern freedoms introduced by the revolution, continually fought to be granted a space for life and expression, etc., etc. So let's stop there, because this is a reference to the early liberal Catholics in the 20th century, really the 1800s, like Father Montalembert Lamennais, who were actually condemned by Merari Vos, an encyclical written by, I believe it was Pope, was it Gregory the 16th, or was it Pius the 6th? I can't recall. In any case, they were condemned because they were simply asking for a free church and a free state. They saw the writing on the wall that the liberal institutions, the liberal governments at the time, were not going to allow the church to be restored to its rightful place in the social sphere. There wasn't going to be a social kingship of Christ. So they said, well, let us draw down our swords. Let's just simply be one of many in this pluralistic liberal order. Everybody else has freedom of religion. Everybody else has freedom of speech. Let's now just make a deal with this system, this Masonic system, to be part of it. And the church condemned that in Merari Vos in 1832 by saying, no, the church has the right to reign. Christ has the right to reign over the temporal sphere. Error has no rights. So to put yourself into this system, that's not a thing Catholics can do in principle. Right. And so what the good Abbé here is seemingly saying, he's saying, look, there's a parallel here. Because what are we seeing now? He says, look, all things being equal, in the ecclesiastical system of the 21st century, a relaxation of the ideological despotism of the Reformation could be beneficial. But while it may be advantageous in the short and medium term, it could prove radically unsatisfactory. So what he's saying here is that, look, we recognize in the Vatican there is ecumenism prevailing, right? There is a desire to have dialogue with everybody, right? The Anglicans, the Baptists, the Lutherans, the Orthodox, etc. We just saw Leo reach out to and invited the Orthodox to the Vatican and said we should not vie for the primacy of the papacy, right? Scandalous comment of itself. But so His Excellency is saying here, or Father Barthe is saying here, that it seems that therefore, if Rome is open to allowing a certain amount of freedom to the traditional movement, then why can't we just kind of go along? Again, that's the Michael Matt approach. Hey, let's find a little space. Let's be, as Bishop Sanborn has said, a small little side chapel in this conciliar pantheon, this conciliar cathedral, where ecumenism reigns supreme, where error reigns supreme. Can't we just find a little space there? Well, Archbishop Viganò notes, as we've noted before, no, that is to bargain with the faith and to put it under the errors of the synodal church, to ask for a free so-called traditional movement and a free synodal ecumenical church. It's just applying ecumenism to tradition. It's of itself belittling tradition, which again has the right to reign in the Vatican. These are usurpers, as we've said before in this show, usurpers and squatters who are occupying the Vatican and illegally even, controlling the positions of power that otherwise, again, the church has for truth, right? In any case, they are, you might say, theological terrorists, and one does not negotiate with theological terrorists. In any case, here's what His Excellency says. He says that to highlight what Abbé Barthe says, there are those who would resort to the adversary's arguments to gain legitimacy in the ecclesiastical world, applying the argumentum ex concessis. In other words, let's have some concessions and maybe we can be agreed to and to be allowed to have our little side chapel. He says, however, this appeal to that same synodality may be recognized as one of many expressions of the composite ecclesial polyhedron. Archbishop Viganò has a beautiful way of expressing his arguments. Here's what he also says about Abbe's letter. He says, his denunciations reveals not a paradox, but the paradox, the contradiction that fundamentally undermines any claim to orthodoxy on the part of self-styled conservatives. And what is that? His Excellency explains. That is the acceptance of the revolutionary principles of the so-called synodal church as the incomplete, moreover, counterpart to being tolerated by it. Yes, this is again going back to the 1800s, where the liberal Catholics who were condemned by the popes at the time repeatedly, okay, not just in 1830s, but also by Pius IX, and then by St. Pius XII, or St. Pius X, excuse me, in the early 1900s. His Excellency notes, in reality, this exchange is far from equal. The synodal church merely applies to conservatives the same legitimacy of existence it grants to any other movement or charisma presented in the multifaceted ecclesial fabric. And this, I want to take a break here and make a comment, because this is what, again, we just commented on with the SSPX going to the Vatican, going into the ecclesial zoo, the ecumenical zoo that is on display there. Again, for many years, the Society of St. Pius X denounced making a deal with the Vatican. Again, here is a, if you go to the article itself, here's Bishop Tissier. He said, let us reject the wrong supposition of our bad friends, he calls them, who say the society is now in an abnormal situation because we are not acknowledged by the church rather. The society must come back to the normal situation and receive a canonical status from Rome. That is wrong, he says. That is wrong. We are not in the abnormal situation. The abnormal situation is in Rome. And he goes on, we have not to come back, etc. But moving on, more specifically to His Excellency's point. Again, for those who haven't read this, go to the Cox News Substack and you can read this. The SSPX, again, spoke like this for a very long time. And in 1988, this was a letter they signed just after the consecration that Archbishop Lefebvre did. They wrote a joint statement, and it said, quote, as for us, we are in full communion with all the popes and bishops before the Second Vatican Council. We have never wished to belong to this system which calls itself the conciliar church. To be publicly associated with this sanction would be a mark of honor for us. They're talking about the excommunications that were given to Lefebvre. And even Archbishop Fillet in the early 2000s, when the Diocese of Campos made its entry into this pluralistic system, its agreement with the Vatican, Bishop Fillet said the following: it is primarily because of the pluralistic and ecumenical vision of things now prevailing in the Catholic world that this has happened. From such a standpoint, there will be even a little room for Catholic tradition, but for our part, we cannot accept this vision. He says, for sure, the day will come when Rome will come back to Rome's own tradition. For the time being, to foster illusions would be deadly. They no longer see the situation of the church as a whole. They content themselves, he's talking about the Diocese of Campos here, with Rome's little gesture in favor of their little group. This is essentially what Archbishop Viganò is calling attention to. When the Vatican strikes a recognition or allows for conservatives to have approval, right, to be allowed to operate with its blessing, with its imprimatur, okay, that's what's happening here. He said, no, they're just extending the synodal principles to tradition. And he calls out the conservatives, I think, in this way, which is very, very important as well. The unwritten contract between conservatives and the post-Purgolian hierarchy stipulates that the liturgical preferences, again, the preferences, that's what you have to accept these extraordinary form of the Mass on. You have to buy into Ratzinger's position that it's the extraordinary form, and that it's just your subjective preference, not that it's intrinsically better or that it's more objectively Catholic. You have to accept, literally, pinch that incense, send that pinch of incense to the conciliar gods, to the Novus Ordo emperors, and say, yes, we believe the Novus Ordo Mass is legitimate. It's not inherently better than the Novus Ordo. Right? And here's again what he says, Archbishop Viganò: the conservatives are simply a group of clerics and faithful. They can be tolerated if and only if they refrain from highlighting the heterogeneity, incompatibility, and alienation between the ecclesiology and the entire doctrinal framework underlying the Old Latin Mass and those expressed in the Montanian Rite. And that's why, again, our battle is not over the Latin Mass per se. Again, it was at the council, even before the council, everyone was saying the Latin Mass, even the modernists at the time. Yves Congar, Karl Rahner, Father Ratzinger. Again, when you empty the traditional Mass of its doctrinal content, of what it stands for, again, tradition. This is why, after Vatican II, they asked Lefebvre to simply say the Latin Mass, and they say, oh, if you just say this Latin Mass, and you, or if you say the Novus Ordo Mass, and you go along with this, everything will be okay. Okay, just say it. And he recognized, no, because the Latin Mass, the traditional Mass, is a banner of rebuke to the modernist religion. It stands in direct opposition. These are not reconcilable things. And so when you say that they are equal, the extraordinary and the ordinary, you are emptying out everything the Latin Mass stands for. In other words, what Bishop Sanborn has said recently on one of his podcasts, he said the beauty and reverence of the traditional Latin Mass is that it caps the beauty and the truth of the doctrines of the traditional faith. Okay? And when you say that Latin Mass, but buy into the synodal conciliar religion, the Vatican II sect, it's like putting on a Halloween costume. Everything underneath it is inauthentic. It's not real. You're just masquerading around as if on parade. It doesn't have the meaning behind it. Archbishop Viganò actually even mentions that to a point here as well. And we'll bring that back up. All right. So again, and here's his point. The deception is twofold, he says, for those who want to say both the Latin Mass and the traditional and the new Mass, and to accept the principles of the conciliar ideology. The paradox is that, above all, because of a much worse trap, he says, consisting of accepting, at least implicitly, the forced, unnatural, and impossible separation between the ceremonial form of the rite and its doctrinal substance. This, he says, is an operation of de-signification of the liturgy, which consists in being recognized with the right to celebrate in the Tridentine Rite on the condition that the celebrant does not accept the doctrinal and moral implications of that rite. That's perfect. This is fantastic, fantastic writing. We'll jump ahead to now, I think, the most important part of this, at least what's significant to what's going on with the traditional Catholic media and so-called movement. And here's what His Excellency has to say about that. The synodal church includes conservatives in its coveted pantheon, not only because it gives them what they want, again, solemn pontifical liturgies, but also demanding none of the Holy See's interlocutors has the slightest intention of demanding more. Again, just accept us as we are, right? This is an argument that the SSPX has said in years past. The problem is, however, that the SSPX is not as they are. Again, go to Amazon. Sean Johnson wrote this blog. Sean runs a Substack now. Google his name. 101 compromises, changes, and contradictions the SSPX has pursued in the face of a practical accord with modernist Rome. Again, those who are unfamiliar with the SSPX, or maybe you've only been around the SSPX for a couple of years now, maybe you don't think there's any changes. Maybe, again, you think there's a lot of same things that the SSPX has said in years past that are saying now, but this is a big problem because obviously there has been many changes in terms of preaching, in terms of persons they're putting, priests they're putting forth, and what they believe about certain crises, etc. In any case, that's a topic for another episode. In any case, though, here's what Archbishop Viganò is saying. The zip-it policy advocated by Trad Inc., according to which the possible concessions the moderates hope to obtain from Leo, suggesting they should not criticize him openly. It's exactly what's going on. This is the policy of Cardinal Burke. Let's just cool it, keep it zipped up, keep it quiet. And I think what's interesting here is to note what His Excellency says here and how he defines Trad Inc. Because again, there's a lot of people who are saying, well, you're not defining it. You're not getting to the root of this. You're just weaponizing this term. Well, here's what His Excellency has to say. Trad Inc. is the American expression which refers to conservative believers in blogs organized like companies which operate according to market logic and are dependent on their shareholders. Sort of a great way to understand it, right? We're in this for the business, if you will. We're in this for, our marketing, our image, our brand, maybe selling books. Big point there. All right, let's keep moving on. His Excellency says, lastly, the path of being persecuted, ostracized, and excommunicated does not seem to be among the options for my brothers. It seems they are already resigned to a fate of tolerance, in which they can neither be truly Catholic nor fully synodal. Neither friends of those who fight the enemy infiltrated into the church, nor of those who seek to replace her with a human surrogate of Masonic inspiration. The Lord will hold these lukewarm priests, strong terms, accountable with greater severity than he will many poor parish priests who have other more pressing pastoral priorities. Let us hope Abbé Barthe's warning does not fall on deaf ears, for the hour of battle approaches, and to be found defenseless and unprepared in these circumstances would be irresponsible. So this is a very, very strong, very praiseworthy, admirable statement given by His Excellency, and we very much applaud it here at Cox News. I know most all of you will appreciate it too. Let me know in the comments what you think as well. This is a strong statement, and again, goes to exactly everything we've been saying about the SSPX pilgrimage going to Rome, rebuking and reminding, rather, all of those who are saying, oh, we're so back, the Latin, etc. Again, the conciliar pantheon awaits for those who want to offer a pinch of incense and to zip it and to quiet down. But again, we will not do that. We are not interested in playing politics with the faith. What we do when we speak up is we defend truth, because error has no rights at all times. The day after a conclave, the 100th day after a conclave, 150th day after a conclave, 7 years after a conclave, 6 years after a council, that's erroneous. We have to defend the honor of God, and that's what we do when we speak out. Again, truth is the best solution for any situation. Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Scripture also says, let your words be truthful in season and out, not ambiguous. Let your yes be yes, let your no be no. So that's what we will be going with going forward. We will continue to watch this situation as more and more voices will most likely either probably just ignore Archbishop Viganò, again, who has been ignored by Michael Matt before. He canceled him last year, 2 years ago, at the Catholic Identity Conference. And that was something I'm sure was on the back of Archbishop Viganò's mind when he gave these statements. But again, this is a mask-off moment, as I've said before. And I want to bring this back up again, because you're going to see people who are blaming us, who are getting angry at us and others for causing so-called division. in the traditional community, when in fact it's those who were in the most prominent positions of this so-called movement for the last 12 years, and even beyond that, who are the traitors now. So we're not the ones who are causing the division. This is a mask-off moment for the fake semi-trads and the real counter-revolutionaries who are rising up, those stones that are crying out, who want to, again, repeal the council. Again, that's where this break occurred. It's where the usurpers, where the modernists got into those positions and drove out from the church unjustly, illicitly, those who had been supporting the faith itself. And again, we're not doomers, okay? Don't use John the 23rd talking points against us. We are living in reality. Stay in reality. Quit giving false hope. This is an occupied situation, right? We are living under occupying powers for 60 years now, since Vatican II, all right? So we must keep our heads screwed on straight and understand the battle is about doctrine, not just a Latin Mass, which again is nice, but Latin Mass, as Archbishop Viganò here says, untethered to or detached from the traditional doctrines doesn't make any sense. It's scandalous. And so, these squatters in Rome who might give some peanuts if we just keep it quiet, that's a scandalous and dishonorable arrangement. And Archbishop Viganò has lent his voice to the cause here for truth and the counter-revolution. So we thank him. Please pray for His Excellency. Again, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble channels. Follow us on Twitter. And again, thank you for watching today's special episode, special report for Cox News. May God bless you and take care. Until next time.